Very good afternoon and welcome to our session on how to deal with failed IVF. Considering this topic to a very crucial and a very important one, we have our Dr. Ms. Saloni Srivastava among us today to help us understand it better. The doctor will help us go through this topic very sensitively and briefly. And also, for a lot of people who have doubts regarding this, can comment and ask anything they want to our doctor. Doctor, you have the stage.
Okay. Hi. Thank you so much for that introduction. So, I'm Saloni Srivastava, and I am the consultant counseling psychologist at Apollo Cradle Children Hospital in Brookfield, Bangalore. So, today we are discussing about a topic that is how to deal with failed IVF. But before we get into that conversation, I want to first discuss why we need to discuss that, how to cope with this situation and why this question arises in the first place, right? So recently, in my experience of dealing with IVF women and IVF couple, I have seen a lot of cases where the couple are coming for their third cycle or fourth cycle of IVF, and they have not really dealt with the past of past grief, past trauma of going through a failed IVF, right? So when they don't deal with the past IVF failure, what happens is it hinders their current process of conceiving or actually reacting positively to the current IVF process, right? So we'll start with not just understanding the failure, but the long process that is there. In IVF, it's just not 1 day of operation or something like that. It's a 9 day. First, you have to go through 9 days of injection. Then you have to go through the ovum pickup. Then there is a fertilization process. Then, if it's successful, then it actually happens, right? So, in itself, IVF is a very financially as well as mentally burdening process, right? So, when a person, I would not say that just the women, the man in the couple as well, goes through this process of IVF, what happens is they have invested so much energy, so much financial energy, so much mental energy, so much physical energy, that they tend to develop a sense of anxiety, a sense of sort of sense of depression, that what if it doesn't work out, or what if if it's in spite of despite of putting so much into this thing, into this process, it doesn't give you the results. So that usually happens. So for that, I do see patients, and I am telling them that, listen, you have to maintain a positive mindset, and if not positive, at least a more self-aware kind of mindset. So that's what we do when the IVF process is going on, right? And a lot of times, one of the partner, either it can be the woman or the man, falls into trap of feeling the guilt, right? The guilt of not being able to help the partner in this this natural process of birth giving, right? So they feel that they are to be blamed for this process, which again adds to the burden of the IVF process. Now imagine that through the process of IVF, already the couple, the woman is already going through so much, right? She's already dealing with so much, she's already having so much of stress, anxiety, depression. And on top of that, if the IVF fails, if the IVF is not successful, then what happens is that anxiety, that stress, that depression is amplified, and it is now seen in a more wider range of being equal to what happens when a woman goes through a normal abortion or miscarriage or pregnancy loss, and it's the same reaction the woman faces. Now, when we talk about the pregnancy loss or miscarriage or abortion, we think that, okay, this woman has gone through something major, right? She needs to grieve. She needs to express what is happening inside her. She needs to have that space to actually say that, listen, something I was dreaming of, it didn't happen. And it's I'm not okay. That statement of saying I'm not okay, we have now in our society, we have given that thing to the women who go through pregnancy loss, miscarriage, and abortion. But to women who go through IVF failure, it becomes very tough, because a lot of my patients have mentioned that, because of the taboo around IVF, because of the taboo around, this artificial pregnancy, that the word that they use, right? So they feel that they don't want to mention this thing to their, closed ones, dear ones, right? And what happens is, when they don't talk about this to their close ones and dear ones, they lose the privilege of saying that I am not okay, right? And they keep on moving forward, one after the other. They'll keep on trying for the IVF cycles, and ultimately one day they'll just break down. So in order to prevent that breakdown, in order to maintain that position of the women where she can make the decision that if she wants to move forward with the IVF or not, is very, very important in this whole process. And that can only be done if the woman has dealt with the past trauma, with the past grief of, losing this idea of pregnancy. Now, when we talk about failed IVF, a lot of, people think that, how can the woman grieve the same way as, pregnancy loss or pregnancy miscarriage, right? It's the same because of the length of the process, right? When the process is so long, when the process has been going on for months, what happens is, in certain part of the mind, the woman, actually the couple, has actually somewhere just conceived this idea that now they are pregnant, right? Now they are going to be a parent. And when the IVF failure happens, what happens is, this idea is also shattered. And it's the same as any normal pregnancy loss, miscarriage, abortion. So when that happens, it's the same reaction. Now, when we talk about, loss, when we talk about losing this idea of being a mother, of being a parent, what happens is, they have to go through stages of grief. Now, what do we mean by stages of grief? Whenever there is a loss of somebody, what happens is, a person usually goes through certain stages of grief. First of which is denial. In that stage, the person just denies that, okay, it's not true. My IVF has not failed. It would, maybe the reports are wrong. Maybe, there is something that can be done still now. So that is the first stage. That is the denial stage. Second is the anger stage. Now, in this anger stage, the person tries to either blame somebody else or themselves, that, why is it happening to me? Am I not the right person? And all those anger, outwards or inward statement, will come into the picture, where they also feel that maybe I could have gone to some other hospital, some other doctor could have helped, the staff, or anything XYZ thing. They express their anger towards them. Third is the bargaining stage. Now, in that bargaining stage of grief, what happens is, then the person comes to the realization that it has happened. Now, what could have, they could have done to make it better? So, for example, they feel that if they would have eaten something better, if they would have, done something other than what they were doing, they would have taken care of themselves or anything like that, then it would not have happened. Now, what happens in this state is, when the person is blaming themselves and the bargaining also comes into the picture, they feel that they are not worthy. There is a sense of then hopelessness, and, they feel that, okay, even if, the process is there, I am giving the money, everything, that has to be done is being done, but there is something innately wrong with myself, and that's why this is not happening to me. Now, that experience puts them into this next state of grief, that is the depression state, where they feel that this is the end. After this, I don't want to go for another try of IVF, or, this is just not meant for me, or statements like that, where they feel that, okay, it's just something that I can't do. And from that depression phase, that's this place where, we have to work on coping with the failed IVF, which we are going to discuss. And from there, They, by various methods, techniques, by talking to somebody and all those things, the woman is able to come out of that depression phase and come to a state of acceptance. That is the last state of grief. That is the last state of grieving for somebody, somebody has lost. So in acceptance, the person has accepted that, okay, this has happened. This is the reality. I was supposed to, be a mother, and I was in my mind, I have, already had this idea that, okay, I'm going to be a mother, I'm going to be this parent, and all those things. But what happens is ultimately it didn't work out, and there is a sense of acceptance. So, in that acceptance, only the woman can then make a rational decision whether she wants to move forward with another IVF or not. If the woman is not given that opportunity to go through all these stages of grief, to go through, all these experiences, what happens is she will not be in a state where she has already accepted the idea that, okay, one IVF has failed. It wasn't because of me, it wasn't because of anything else, it was just that it didn't work out. That's just the bottom line, that it did not work out. So what happens is, in that case, the women, if they have not, accepted that idea that it's not their fault, the blaming is still there, in that case the woman is not ready for the next IVF case, and it hinders the process of the next cycle, because they are constantly, the state of anxiety, depression, stress keeps on increasing with every IVF cycle. So now, now we will go into the topic, the main topic, that is how to deal with the failed IVF. We have discussed what happens in terms of mental health of the women, but now we will discuss, okay, of course it has happened, of course the depression, the stress, anxiety has happened, the person is grieving. How do we deal with that on a personal level, also on a societal or on a interpersonal level? If you are, you're the partner of somebody who's going through this, or if you yourself are going through something like this, or you know somebody who's going through something like this, how to go about it, right? Before we go into that topic, I would like everyone, request you all to first, because this is very sensitive topic, because we are going through, so many grief topics, so many loss topics. If you feel uncomfortable, please feel free to put it in the chat, and just, we can maybe answer your questions at the end of this session, and we'll definitely try to answer all your questions, so that you don't leave this session without your questions being answered. Okay, so let's talk about the dealing mechanisms. Let's talk about the coping mechanisms. Let's divide that coping mechanisms into two parts. First is the emotion focused, and second is the problem focused. In the emotion focused part, that comes the first. When you are grieving, when you are, going through a failed IVF, going through the loss of a failed IVF, the first reaction of yours should be the emotion focused and not the problem focused. You can't be the person who, has gone through the loss, and the next day you're just like, okay, emotions are not important at this point of time, I need to decide what to do next. Because if you do that, you are not paying attention to a very important part of your body, that is your emotions, that keeps, your mental health in place, that keeps your mental health in check. So first we'll go through the emotion focused part, in which first step is just accepting, the acceptance of these difficult emotions, the acceptance of just realizing that something has happened. I have been looking forward to this thing. I have been looking forward to this process being successful, to this process being, giving you the opportunity to be a parent. When you lost hope in the natural conceiving part, and you have put in your financial, mental, physical energy, and then it did not happen, that acceptance has to be there. If a person is constantly in denial that, okay, listen, it's okay, nothing has happened and all those things, what happens is you're not giving your mind the space to accept that idea, right? So if you are that person, first just sit with yourself and just say, listen, it's okay, it has happened, and I am accepting this situation as it is. From there only, you will be able to move forward to the next position, that is right to grieve. Right to grieve is you let yourself give the space to cry. And I'm not just saying this for the woman, but I'm also saying this for the partner, right? Your partner and you both have the right to cry in this time, because again, you yourself were ready, you were in a state of, being in a position where you were ready to be a parent. And from there to go to a place of losing that hope, right? It's sad. And if it's sad, you have to cry. If you don't cry and you feel that, okay, listen, nothing has happened, I will just, hold on to it and all of that, what you're doing is you're sending a signal to your brain, you're sending a signal to your, environment, that nothing has happened, move forward, move forward. And what happens is then you will reach a point of exhaustion, a point of breakdown, where you feel that nothing is, important, nothing is just making sense to you. So give yourself space to cry. If you feel like crying, please cry, and be mindfully aware of what is happening in your body. So, for example, in these times, what happens is when a person is grieving, we tend to forget that, okay, it is affecting our body. And it is, in some way, it might give you some sensation, or maybe you will have breathlessness. Maybe some patients have also come with the complaint of having constant headaches and all those things. And then we will have a session where we just talk about emotions, and their headache will be gone. Because you're holding on to so much emotion, it takes energy out of your body, and that gives you headache. So be aware, be mindful of what is happening inside your body and in terms of your, mental health as well. And next step that is there for emotion focused, coping mechanisms is a writing a letter. Writing a letter is, you would feel that what help it would do, right? You have to pick a paper, write a letter to your past self, the self who was, who was going through the process of IVF, thinking that, you're going to be a parent, or, you are going through this process which is going to be successful. You have to write a letter to that past self of yours, and express all your emotions, that you empathize with that person, you empathize with your past self. You know that, you really wanted, you craved for that moment, and of course it didn't happen. It's sad, but you have to write that letter in a very empathetic tone, because that will help you be in touch with yourself. And you will also remember a time where you were happy about this process, where you were looking forward towards this process, which will of course in the future give you strength to go ahead and again go through another cycle of IVF. And next step is venting out. We in the society have underrated the word venting out so much, because we feel that, okay, why do I need to talk about what I'm feeling? Why do I need to, trouble somebody else about what I'm feeling? But we don't realize that by not telling our closed ones, by not telling our loved ones what we are feeling, what our emotions are, and all those things, we are actually not giving them the right what they deserve. They deserve to know what is going on, in your mind, in terms of your emotions, in terms of your mental health. So it is a very good idea to always vent your emotions out, and take your partner with yourself in this journey. Because sometimes what happens is, I have met patients where the couple suddenly, distances themselves from each other, because they want to protect each other from the emotions. The husband is not talking to the wife, and the wife is not talking to the husband, and they don't have any other social support, because they have not told anyone that they went through the IVF process. Now in that situation, what happens is, just in order to care and nurture for their partner, they are not actually telling the other person that, listen, I'm going through something. So vent your emotions out, and take your partner with yourself in this journey, or else it won't be, you need to have that couple time still. You still are a family without, without the baby, without this pregnancy, without this conceived child, you still are a family, you still are a unit. And if you don't realize that, the distance keep on growing with each IVF cycle. So vent it out with your partner and take them with yourself on this journey. And through this journey of grief, be very kind to yourself, be very self aware, be very, empathetic to yourself, because you yourself has done everything. You yourself were, ready to be a parent, but it did not happen. And there are not just the IVF process or the mental health process, there are so many other factors that affect the possibility of the IVF being successful. So it didn't happen because of, you don't know what XYZ reason was there, right? That can only be done when we are moving forward to the problem, focused solution, that where we will discuss about, how to figure out what has gone wrong, right? But till that time, please be empathetic and kind to yourself. And if you know somebody who's going through this thing, you have to be extra kind to them, because they themselves anyway are going through a lot of hormonal changes, a lot of physical changes, and plus with that a lot of mental trauma and grief is there. So in order to help them deal with this kind of grief, this complex kind of grief, you have to be there. You have to tell them that, listen, you have to be kind to yourself, because it's, even if they did absolutely everything right, I have met patients who have taken care of their bodies in the best possible manner, and still it did not work out for them. So it's not like, you can always control all the factors. So what you have to do is just be kind to yourself and just listen to your body. If it's saying something, please receive the message and go see your doctor. That's very, very important. And always have a positive talk kind of tone with your own self, that when you're talking to yourself, you just have to say that, listen, okay, I know it has happened. I know we really wanted to, it to be successful, but I did what I could and it did not get successful. Maybe I'll try later on, but at this point of time, I just love myself. I'm going to take care of myself, and that's all. That's all I'm going to do. And it's such a small conversation, but it changes everything. When you are kind to yourself, it, it changes the tone of your life, it changes the tone, the way you talk to yourself, and it changes your perspective about the world. So just be a little kind to yourself and give yourself space to vent out, cry. And if you are somebody who knows somebody who's going through this, give them the time to just cry, to just vent, to just, exist in that situation. Let them exist. If you keep on pressuring them that, listen, you have to come out of this phase, it's okay, it's nothing is wrong and all of that, what happens is we are belittling their emotion. If you tell somebody that, listen, nothing is wrong, it's going to be all okay, what happens is you're telling them right now what you're feeling, it's nothing. What you have to tell them is, I know it's bad right now, but I'm here, and we will get through this, and then we will talk about what to do next. And then when they are out of that phase, of course you're going to tell them that, listen, you got through this, it's, you can go for another process of IVF or whatever you want to decide. So if you are there for somebody else, be kind to them and to yourself. That's the bottom line of grieving, and how to deal with the failed IVF in terms of emotions. Now comes the second part of problem focused. When we talk about problem focused, it comes after you have dealt with your emotions. It comes absolutely after when you have dealt with all kind of incidents and experiences that have gone through the process of IVF. So once you are done with that, once you have accepted the situation that, okay, it happened, it was sad, I have experienced the grief, I have let go of that idea, now what? And again, I'm not putting any timeline, time limit that, you can only grieve for 1 week, you can only grieve for 1 day, you can only grieve for 1 month. It depends on you how long you want to grieve. And how much you want to grieve. You can always talk to your doctor that, I feel like I'm not ready for IVF right now. Can I take a break for 2 months? Can I take a break for 3 months? And all those things, when you talk to your doctor about all these things, they will also understand that you are not mentally okay. You're not right now in an emotional state to, to go through another process of IVF, because again, IVF is a very intensive process. So when you have that conversation and you feel that, okay, now I'm ready, now I feel like, I am mentally ready to, okay, again go through this process, and whatever the outcome is, I'm ready to face that. That's when you go and move towards the second phase, that is the problem focused. First is you talk to your doctor. As I mentioned, you have to talk to your doctor about, what went wrong, how it went wrong, and if there was that something went wrong, or it was just, some kind of chance or luck, or it didn't just happen. So if those are the things, you have to go see a doctor. Both the partners have to see the doctor so that they can make notes, they can make a better plan for the next cycle when they are going to try again for IVF. So that's the first step. Second is educate yourself. Now, when I say educate yourself, I'm not saying that you should go on Google and just search that, how to deal with this, or how do I, make my chances better or anything, because on websites or on online platforms, what happens is it's never full information. It is, it's always based on a general idea of how things happen. But in medical field, in fields like IVF, or IUI, or all those fields, it's very dynamic. It depends on each patient and each couple, how it happens, how to deal with that, right? So you have to educate yourself about the IVF process, about the consequences, about, how to go about it with your own doctor. You can definitely talk to the nurses. You would be in good contact with the nurses, reception, and there will be mental health counselors there. You can of course meet them. You would meet the care managers, and you can also take actual real material that has been written on IVF and educate yourself about the process, and how, you can read about people's experience of, how it went for them, how they took care of themselves, how, if something didn't work out for them, what did they did, in the past, which you would, not like to repeat. So all those things, that is a reliable source of, taking in information. So please educate yourself about the process. Take a break. As I mentioned that, if you feel that there is a need for a break, please take a break, or else you will just be exhausted going through one cycle to another to another. Indulge yourself in holistic self-care, not just about, your mental health, not just about your physical health. You have to take care about absolutely everything. You have to go see, even if you have not informed your friends and family, you can still go and see them if they create a positive impact on you. And if you feel that your family, your friends are going to pressure you into, this conversation about this pregnancy and all those things, then you can avoid those situations as well. Social situations, attending or not attending, should only be determined by your own mental health and nothing else. So do that. Take care of yourself in a holistic manner, and not just about, I'll eat good food, I'll exercise. That's good, but what about your mental, emotional, and social health? So do that. Then don't blame yourself. That's another important pattern of emotion and problem focused. When you talk to your doctor, maintain a positive attitude. Don't I'm not ready. This person is constantly blaming themselves and all those things. So don't blame yourself for absolutely anything, and go seek a support group. So there are a lot of support groups which, where a lot of couples who have gone through failed IVF come together, talk about their experience, talk about their emotions. And if you want to, it can be an online community, or it can be an offline community where you go. You can ask your hospital, They would be able to provide you some references as to where the, this support group is happening. So you can go and indulge yourself in those kind of group discussions, because it will really help you to understand that, you are not alone. You're not the only person who's going through this. And that will make you, understand that you are not the one who's to be blamed. It's just a process. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it does not happen. And not just in IVF, even if it's a natural conceiving process, a lot of times it does not work out. A lot of times miscarriages, a lot of time abortion, a lot of pregnancy losses are happening, right? So when we give that space to natural conceiving women, we also have to give that space to IVF conceiving women, and failed IVFs, the same kind of respect, the same kind of space, the same kind of emotional support to these women who go through this failed IVF. And the last thing that you have to do in your problem focused thing is see a fertility counselor. When you go through a process of failed IVF, you have to see a professional, you have to see a mental health fertility counselor who can guide you through the process of what I just described, the grief stages. They can tell you different techniques what you can do. Maybe you can write a letter, maybe you can, every week go to a support group, all those things. You have to see a professional, because they will be the best suited to help you through that process. They'll be able to guide you, they will be able to navigate you to maybe different places, and they can also tell you that, how to keep taking care of your emotional health through the, through this long process. So that is there. Of course, when we talk about emotion focused, problem focused, all these things keeping aside, do whatever makes you happy through that process. If taking a break makes you happy, go ahead and do that. If going for another cycle of IVF makes you happy, go ahead and do that. Because whatever you do, it has to ultimately make you happy. Because, for example, what if you have not dealt with the grief of past failed IVF, and you again go for a cycle and you conceive in this manner, right? You conceive this time, and it comes positive, and now you're going through 9 months of pregnancy with, while you're carrying the, the past trauma, while you're carrying the past grief, right? So give yourself some kind of space, give yourself love, give yourself kindness, and just be in that state for a while. Don't be scared that, how will I be in this sad state, how will I be in this, horrible state that we can think of. Just exist, and when it becomes tough, of course, see your doctor, see your counselor, and they'll really really help you. So that brings us to, the end of how to deal with failed IVF. And now I saw a question, so I'll just answer that question. We should be in touch with the patient throughout the journey, explain the process stepwise. Okay, yes. So when we talk about that, thank you so much for this question. That yes, we should be in touch with, the patient throughout the journey, not just in terms of the doctor, but also the counselor. As a counselor, I really practice this thing that, I meet my patients every alternate day when they are coming in for 9 days of injection. Then I meet them after the ovum pickup, and whenever they want to reach out to me, they don't have to have an appointment with the doctor to see me. They can, whenever they want, they can come and see me. Because a lot of times when we talk about IVF, I have met a lot of patients who are not scared of the IVF process, but they are scared of bits and pieces of the process. Like, they are scared of anesthesia, they are scared of the injections that they are getting. And what happens is, you have to work with the patient in, in order to help them go through all those mental problems that they are facing. For example, if a person, if a patient is scared of injections, what you can do is just tell them that, whenever they get the injection, they can come in your room, in the counseling center, and they can vent out their, anger, they can cry about it, they can, you have to give that space to the patient, where they feel that, the hospital, the counseling center, the doctor also is taking a holistic care of the patient and not just the IVF process. So that is there. You have to see what the core problem for the patient is. You have to, as doctors and counselors and mental health professional, we all are aware about the grief stages. So if there is a failed IVF, we can of course guide them and navigate them through the failed IVF grieving process. We can tell them about how to they can navigate through their anger. If they are blaming themselves, how to help them understand that it's not their fault. So all those things are there. Of course, as a doctor, as a counselor, as a mental health professional, we have to be in constant touch with the patient and see to it that, again, the same approach, the empathetic, kind, and loving approach, that this is their space, and we understand that they are going through something major in their life. Because of course, planning for family is in itself a big, very daunting process. But with that, if we mix this idea of IVF, right, it becomes even more daunting. And most of the couples, because of the taboo, would not talk about the IVF process to the family, friends, and society. So now all they have is this hospital and the partner support. So we have to decide if they want couple counseling, if they want personal individual counseling, how to deal with the anxieties, the injections, blood, all those phobias, we have to see to it as well. So yeah, I hope that answer your question. Is there any question? Okay, there is another question. Thank you for the session. Don't you think that letting a person grieve for unlimited amount of time can lead to a person getting stuck in loop of sadness? So when we talk about grief, okay, as I mentioned that there are different stages of grief, right? So if you are talking about stages of grief, there are at the end, you if you had have noticed, I said that the last stage is acceptance, where the person has now accepted the situation and now they make a rational choice of moving forward from there. If a person is stuck in one of the stages, maybe in depression or maybe blaming, that's when the counselor and mental health professional comes into picture and helps them to to understand that, okay, how to not be in this stuck, as you said, that be stuck in this phase, right? But also, grief, as a matter of fact, cannot be defined in terms of timeline. So for some people, when there is a loss, there is a death of somebody, there is a loss of somebody, we give them space for maybe 6 months, 4 months. But when it crosses a certain amount of time, maybe 1 year, and you still feel that this person is still in denial that this has happened, then that's when you know that there is something wrong. So the people around the person, the patient, can definitely see that it has been a substantial amount of time and still this person is still stuck in this phase. That's when it's advised also to see a professional, seek professional help, and then the counselor can really help you. But it's not an unlimited amount of time, but you cannot set a timeline for each individual, because each individual functions on their own pace. So yeah, I think this is it. So I think thank you so much for this live session. And yeah, so next week we are going to talk about how do couples function in terms of IVF couples, the the kind of problems, the kind of support that is going to be there. So do join in for that session, and I think that's about it. Thank you so much.